Welcome back, guys. Are you somebody who struggles with training your hamstrings or glutes effectively, especially as it pertains to hinge movements? Or maybe you're somebody who deals with back pain when you're doing lower body training in general. Today I want to walk through, one, how to hinge, but also some key points that we can look at for correcting your own hinging without necessarily needing a coach, as well as kind of troubleshooting some issues where we might be experiencing back pain. So if that sounds like you, stick around, let's hop into it. So before we get into kind of the 3 points I want to look at for hinging, it's first very important we understand the glutes, what they're doing in a hinge. Our glutes are going to be extending the hip, right? So as we go through the movement, we should be getting relative length to our glutes, understanding that the glutes extend the hip, externally rotate the hip. We're going to know as we go through hip flexion, we need to get length to our glutes. They're going to need to go through flexion and internal rotation. Now, with the nerdy stuff out of the way, what does that mean looking at our stance? Very often people will get way too wide in their stance when they do hinging, and it's going to make it very hard for me to get hip and internal rotation as I'm hinging. You see my knees going out. So as a general rule, I want feet to be hip width. If you have wider hips or more narrow hips, that's going to make a bigger difference, obviously, in how wide or narrow your hips are. Generally speaking, a more narrow stance will make it much easier when I grab the bar, much easier for me to get relative internal rotation, get length to my glutes as I move my hips back in space, right? So stance width, we're going to say is number 1. 2, second thing we're going to look at is going to be foot pressure while we're hinging. So a lot of people, when they hinge, they're going to want to start in their heels and they're going to rock back in their heels as they hinge. I don't want to be in my heels for a couple of reasons that we're going to jump into. First off, if I'm in my heels, I'm in a very weak position. It's going to be very easy just to push me over, right? Intuitively, we can get back in this heel position and feel like we're going to fall over, right? You'll see my toes kind of coming up while I'm doing this. So 1, we're in a weaker position. 2, our center of mass is already back. My center of mass is back. I can't shift my center of mass back better. Posterior translation of the pelvis is what I'm getting when I hinge. It's going to be a hard time to actually effectively get into hip flexion and internal rotation. So what I want to do is I want to focus on getting mid-foot pressure. When I say mid-foot, I mean the meat of my foot right here, right at the base of my toes. I love to actually cue pushing into our toes and getting a slightly positive shin angle. What's going to happen? We're not going to actually end up in our toes. You're not going to see anybody doing this with their heels coming off the ground. What you're going to see is instead of us coming from here, we're actually going to end up here in a much better position to get into our hips and get effective length to our glutes. So emphasize mid-foot pressure, a slightly forward shin. What we don't want to see, if we were to look at some sort of indicator besides our weight being back in our heels, you're going to see a lot of people let their shins rock back as they go into the hinge. I don't want my shins to rock back. I want to minimize relative movement there. So first things first, stance width, hip width, foot pressure, midfoot. All right, so the third thing that we're going to look at is head position. I don't really care about getting relative flexion or extension of the spine, but my head position is going to control kind of where my center of mass is, right? So if my head is looking up like this as I go back, my center of mass is back, right? My head's going to have some sort of effect on my center of mass. I don't like to aggressively tuck the chin. I do want to cue the head slightly forward. My center of mass is going forward. It's going to be much easier for me to shift my center of mass back. So looking at those 3 things, stance width, hip width, emphasis on midfoot pressure, emphasis on head position. If we look at those 3 things, we can both assess our own hinge variation as well as assess our clients and improve outcomes and how we execute those lifts. The last thing I want to cover is going to be arguably one of the more important things, actually. It's our rib cage to pelvis relationship. So what I don't want to be getting is a lot of what I'll call, for lack of better words, stripper ass. I don't want to be getting an emphasis on anterior pelvic tilt. If my pelvis is moving a little bit, I'm not going to be super concerned, but generally speaking, I don't want to be jamming myself in anterior pelvic tilt while I'm shifting my center of mass back. It's probably going to be no bueno for the low back. So if we're covering all those things, our execution should be getting better, our low back should be feeling better. In a separate video, I'll get into some different warm-ups that we can do to help prepare for the lift. As far as exercise variation goes, we can also not start with a barbell. A barbell is going to be a little bit harder to control our center of mass because the weight's going to be slightly out in front of us. If we want to learn how to do a hinge, I recommend starting with dumbbells or even starting with a trap bar, something where our center of mass is going to be easier to have a little bit closer to our body easier to organize ourselves, easier to execute. So again, fast recap: stance width, hip width, mid-foot pressure / neutral to slightly forward shins, head position, bonus, I guess really 4 things: ribcage and pelvis relationship. Just make sure you don't have stripper ass. If you're struggling with any of those points in execution, give that a try, whether it's from a glute training perspective, whether it's from a low back issue perspective when you're doing your hinging movements. Give us a try. If you want to learn more, reach out. I'm always happy to help.